and that it is very important to us that the Prime Minister see our territories and understand our concerns. And that is why our leadership invited him to sit and meet with us directly. So today we heard directly from the Prime Minister that his government will seek our free, prior, and informed consent regarding any proposed projects in our territories, and that we will co-develop a transparent process moving forward. We are looking forward to partnering with the federal government to help facilitate projects in our territories that support sustainable economic development and marine protection. We also made our positions very clear and reiterated those positions around our stance regarding the oil pipeline, and that has not changed. Coastal First Nations, along with Lax Kw'alaams and the Haisla Nation, oppose any project that proposed to bring oil tankers to the North Coast. We reiterated that there is no technology that can clean up an oil spill at sea, and that it would take just one spill to destroy our way of life. We shared our reliance on a healthy and intact ocean and our determination to protect the ocean and the ecosystem that we rely upon. And it's a reliance not just on coastal First Nations, but Canadians and British Columbians. The Hecate Strait is known as the fourth most dangerous body of water in the world and experiences wildly unpredictable weather and extremely dangerous conditions. And we shared that, and we talked about that, our leadership behind us here and our hereditary leadership. We had many people with us in the room to bring that message forward. The tanker ban is not partisan legislation. It is the result of 50 years of consultation and engagement with our coastal communities, and it is foundational to keeping our coast healthy and our economy strong. We all have aunts and uncles and grandparents that have been a part of different inquiries along the coast. I read, I reflect and I pick up the West Coast Oil Ports inquiry when the Andrew Thompson Commission was, in Namu, where we had some of our people there talking about why, we feel the way we feel about oil tankers on the coast, and why it's detrimental to our values and our way of life. One of our elders, had said he did his testimony all in the Helsik language, and he was translated by Ed Newman, and he talked about the one oil spill would finish us. And we have not deviated from that position at all, and it really does carry forward the work that we do. We made it clear to the Prime Minister Carney that we would always support the oil tanker moratorium, and we called on him to support it, to protect and grow our sustainable economy that we have built on the North, Central, and Haida. And Gagwis will talk about some of the forward-looking discussions that we had, concerning our nations and the work that we could do together.
Hello, Marilyn. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello for coming today. It was really important for us to share with the Prime Minister today that coastal First Nations are in support of sustainable economies, and that our coastal economy is already an important economic driver in this area, worth billions of dollars, and is continuing to grow exponentially. So it was, really important that he accepted our invitation to come here in person, see us face to face, and recognize that we're not just talking about strategic trade corridors and global trade, but this is our home. This is a responsibility for the nations to look after our territory for now and future generations. And our current livelihoods and many current livelihoods and sustenance and food security are what we're talking about here with what's currently already happening, and the good work that we've done together as nations with BC and Canada and building on these sustainable economies and protecting the thousands of jobs, hundreds of businesses, and the billions in economic value that have been generated thanks to those strategic investments in a conservation-led economy. Our coastal economy contributes over $3 billion a year and is growing. And that's what was important to us to share and continue to start to build a relationship with Prime Minister Carney and his government to expand on that. That economy employs up to 30% of the people on the North Coast, and many good jobs here in Prince Rupert. And currently in Northwest BC alone, 40% of these shovel-ready projects that are being identified by the federal government as nation-building priorities are within the Northwest, within these coastal waters, would be impacted in these coastal waters. You know, that includes the recent announcements around expanding LNG projects, critical minerals. And we were very clear in making sure that the Prime Minister understood that each one of those proposals and potential projects has a significant impact on adding to the shipping traffic here on the North Pacific coast, and that we need to make sure that we're prepared for that, and that as each one of these projects goes through its process, that the impacts of shipping, the cumulative effects, coastal erosion, impacts on species and habitat, our communities, our culture is all factored into how we're analyzing this and investing and preparing for that increase in traffic. We are very clear that we support sustainable economies. We're respectful of the challenge that the federal government is facing, and we want to be as flexible as we can in finding ways to work together, but based on our existing agreements and relationships established over many years between the coastal nations, Canada and BC, and coastal communities. Our communities the reality is we are the ones that are impacted by this proposed increase in shipping and projects. So we're the first responders, and we need to be prepared for that. We have firsthand experience from the nation standing here today, responding to the sinking of the Queen of the North, to the Nathan E. Stewart, to close calls like the Simishir. And we need to be deeply involved in collaborating and preparing for that, for existing traffic and proposed increases in traffic in the years to come. So our message was clear: we're not ready. The coast is not ready right now to respond to accidents and emergencies. It takes days to respond. We know the adverse conditions here of weather and tides. And there is an urgent need to prepare our coast for the projected 217% increase in shipping traffic, and make sure we equip our communities with the training, the equipment, the asset, the skills, and our ability to respond swiftly to make sure that people are safe and our ecosystems are safe. So we're happy that the federal government has recognized this situation and the need for increased marine capacity to address the growing impacts of shipping on our sensitive ecosystems and environments, again, our culture, our communities, and that we have shared priorities within our existing agreements in our Oceans Reconciliation Framework Agreement, in our Great Bear Sea Marine Protected Area agreements, and we're looking forward to the next steps in working together to fully implement those agreements and commitments that have been made, and they need to happen in a timely way. questions?
Thank you. We can take questions from folks on the floor here, and then we'll move to online if we have time.
I have a question. There's been some concern raised, I think Premier Eby raised it, that if the federal government and the government of Alberta continue to push forward on this pipeline, coastal First Nations support for other projects might start to evaporate. Has there been any thought of withholding support for projects if the federal government continues to push down a pipeline?
Gagwis talked about, the monumental increase that we're going to see in shipping traffic with these projects. Right now, we're looking at 217% increase with transits topping over 1,000 trips a year. These are things that, we definitely have concern. It provides for cumulative damage and effects, on the seabed and on the ocean. We talked about, having essential marine response capacity to deal with the increased risk and to safeguard the corridor to ensure safe and responsible low impact shipping. The position that we have on the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act is really grounded on these projects that we see that have been greenlit or about to be greenlit, and that we can't see or support in any way oil tankers on top of that. And we've committed to each other. We've committed to the work that we do to ensure that this is done in the safest, most responsible way. That's not something that we can see happening with oil. And so we see that there's a lot of work ahead of us, with these projects being greenlit, and there's a lot of work ahead of us to make sure that what we say or what people, proponents say that it's going to be safe, that it is, and the work that we do as Coastal First Nations, is a part of that work.
Marilyn, Wolf Deppner, Canadian Press. What was the Prime Minister's reaction when you shared with him your group's ongoing opposition to the proposed pipeline? How did he sort of react, both physically, if you wish, and verbally? Mm-hmm. And based on that reaction, what did you take away, or what are you taking away from it in terms of going forward? Because we have Alberta pushing the federal government to sort of speed up this project, and obviously your position has remained. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, what do you see this thing end up? Well,
we felt that it was a good meeting. It was positive. We had our message that was very clear and consistent. With our communities there with us. He heard directly from our communities how we feel, from all of our communities that spoke. We talked about the relationship that we have with the ocean, the relationship that we have with making sure that it's sustainable and protected for future generations. I think we felt that he was listening. He was attentive to hearing what we were saying with his body language. We talked about certainly the need for more discussion, right? That this can't be a one-off meeting. That we have to be able to work together and continue to have that dialogue. And I think that there is a commitment here to ensure that dialogue happens.
Question for either one of you. UNDRIP says seek free, prior, and informed consent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that consent is required for them to move ahead. I'm wondering if Mr. Carney gave you any specific assurances about what happens if you continue to say, no, we do not give consent to Alberta's plan for an oil pipeline that would take
I definitely think that's part of the conversation that we're having, the dialogue that's, required for us to, be at the table and to talk about the work that we are doing, the work that we have been doing with the federal government for the last 25 years as coastal, First Nations. We're very progressive. We've done so much work in this province that supports not just our communities, but the province as a whole and Canadians, through that lens as well. So we do talk about consent, and we would expect that the federal government to abide by its commitment to free, prior, and informed consent, detailed in UNDRIP, and that this would mean that the federal government must take meaningful effort to secure consent by affected Indigenous communities. And we see that as, we're going to have a lot to say about what happens here. We will continue to. And that was, definitely some of the progressive messages that we put forward today.
Does no mean no, or is there an avenue, do you think, for the federal government to proceed regardless of the opposition from people here?
Well, I think what we heard today was we got a better understanding from the Prime Minister directly of the action, obviously, he's looking to take to respond to the challenges with the economy. He did, was able to lay out kind of from his perspective the basic legal requirements, but also we together discussed free, prior, and informed consent, UNDRIP, and really that this reconciliation, respect for the reconciliation process, and that this was the first time we're meeting face to face, and it's the beginning, and we'd expect to continue to have that dialogue with each other throughout. For us, a no is a no. Like we don't, we are understanding, right? Is there is no way to clean up a bitumen spill, and the risks are there, and that whatever process unfolds has to be factored into this bigger picture of existing traffic, these other proposed projects, and the combined risks of all of these things happening together in this area, in this fragile special ecosystem in our territories. And when you really look at the sustainable economies that currently exist, it is there's not room for adding oil tankers to this mix of already thriving coastal economies and the number of existing traffic and the proposed new projects.
A quick follow-up on this idea of consent and the
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to let someone else have a question because we do have limited time.
Thank you. You've been asking for a meeting with the Prime Minister for months. Do you think this meeting should have happened before you signed the MOU? Before he signed the MOU?
Well, that's the message that we sent in the media in our previous response to the MOU with Alberta. But here we are today. He made the efforts. He heard the invitation. He heard the message, and so we are grateful that he showed the respect of honoring that invitation and coming today before making his next trip abroad there. So he's got a big job, and we feel like he showed respect today by making time to come here and see us face to face as we asked.
So when Prime Minister Carney was elected, the Premier of Alberta laid out the 5 unfair laws, one of them the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. Do you believe that if you say no, she's going to stop, and what do you do if she doesn't stop pushing for this pipeline?
Well, I think the Premier of Alberta has been consistent. For us, it's just continuing to do what we're doing, build relationships with the federal government, continue to work with the provincial government, to work together as nations in sharing, why it is a no for us, and helping not British Columbians, helping Canadians, helping everyone understand why we have the position that we have. as title and rights holders, but also because of the existing sustainable economies that rely on a healthy ocean, and continue to educate on why this is not a good idea, which includes, again, factoring in the greater understanding of the geography and the risks, but also looking at this current picture of shipping in this area and the increases and the unsustainability of trying to do it all.
Is there any more questions from
Yep.
the floor here?
Yeah. So just to confirm, just to sort of build on your response to Justine's question, so if I'm hearing correctly, there is no scenario by which the federal government can essentially, and forgive the term, my term, buy you off when it comes to allowing a proposed pipeline. Did I hear that? Did I hear that correctly? So there's no scenario where the federal government comes along and makes an offer that you simply can't refuse, and you drop the opposition to it. Is that correct?
You heard us loud and clear. Yeah, that's a no. And this, our interest isn't about money in this situation. It's about the responsibility of looking after our territories and, again, nurturing the sustainable economies that we currently have here.
And if you permit, just one quick follow-up. What if any possibility exists whereby the federal government applies leverage to your group by saying, hey, you're opposed to our pipeline, but we have also this additional traffic, so you pick your battle here. Do you pick the pipeline, or do you pick the additional support to fighting, to dealing with the additional ship traffic that would exist independently of the pipeline?
Well, I think today, again, was a good step to sit face to face and eye to eye and recognize that this isn't a transactional relationship, that this is a reconciliation journey. The Prime Minister was clear in recognizing, understanding the history of Canada, and the respect that needs to be shown both ways in how we go through this process together. And so I think we took that away from today, that this was an opportunity to begin to build a relationship with the Prime Minister and his government, but this is an ongoing process that we're in together, and not that kind of transactional relationship, as you put it there.
Okay, I am going to move to the questions online. And we have 5 more minutes. Our leadership is traveling today, so we're going to wrap it up at 1:05. And I'm going to go to Alessia with Canadian Press. So you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm wondering, did the Minister Hodgson apologize in person for the Zoom remarks he made back in the fall? And what contributions was he making to the meeting?
Yes, Minister Hodgson did apologize this morning for the comments that he made about holding our meeting via Zoom and virtual, and we had one of our traditional leaders speak to the cultural context of what we would call a washing ceremony, and talked about the apology and the importance of not just being words, but also followed up by actions that will carry ourselves in a different way moving forward. His participation in the meeting was there to he listened. He was there to hear from our communities, and so primarily observing the meeting as a participant of the federal government.
Great.
I'm going to move on. I'm going to go with John Woodside. You could identify where you're from.
Hi, thank you. I'm with the National Observer, and thank you for hosting this press conference today. We really appreciate it. My question has to do with comments the Prime Minister made ahead of the meeting, where he spoke about having a dialogue today about both economic opportunities and the importance of marine conservation, or conservation broadly, I suppose. I'm wondering, could you help me understand, was the Prime Minister talking talking about these things going together, like perhaps looking for support for a pipeline in exchange for, greater funding for the Great Bear Sea or something like that? Or does he consider them to be separate topics, both worthy of discussion? And what are your views on this?
Thanks, John. The Prime Minister, together we did discuss, both of those things. And, again, as Marilyn said in the opening, we were very clear on our position in maintaining the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act and our position remaining firm on that and not wanting to see bitumen transported through our territories. What we focused on was some areas of alignment where we felt we could work together in terms of recognizing the challenge, the leadership challenge for Canada, for him, in some of the proposed projects that he's announced, and trying to amplify for him the understanding of the real world impacts in this part of the world for us and our communities, our cultures, our economy, and the need to balance these things out, that we need to make sure that we are investing in the stewardship and the response planning and the ability to deliver in responding to any emergencies, any accidents, but also that, within that, there's opportunity to continue to move down the path we had already started many years ago with our Indigenous-led conservation economy, investing in, sustainable fisheries, renewable energy, tourism experiences, all those things that are currently happening that provide a lot of economic opportunity, that we need to continue to invest in those and make sure that there are investments here in this part of in the area where these projects are being announced, to support communities to respond and to support the pressures that come along with it.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Ben Major with, I believe it was CTV.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks very much. If the Prime Minister chooses to press ahead with a pipeline project despite opposition, what lengths are coastal First Nations prepared to go to prevent construction?
Part of what we shared today was our communities and our nation's experience with processes that came before this. We talked about the West Coast oil port inquiry, about the Northern Gateway project, and that they're not new, to our communities, and that our determination and resilience around not supporting these types of projects and rejecting them is also consistent. That this is something that we carry forward from leaders and people before us. We have talked about using every tool in the toolbox, whether it's legal, whether it's other tools. But we're also we do so much work collectively. We're very solution-based people, and an organization that runs with a lot of the work that Gagwis was talking about that's in front of us. Going down those roads are not the roads that we choose, right? That's not something that we see as something as we're moving forward on that. We'll always be here to talk about what the alternatives are. What the alternative, there is an alternative to oil. Maybe the projects that have been greenlit, they also cause concern, but they're also something that we're able to sit down and talk about in terms of how we want to address our concerns going forward. So to answer your question, we'll always employ every tool that we have as communities, but we're also very reasonable, and we want to be able to work, in an effort going forward that supports partnership and supports shared objectives instead of obstacles.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to conclude the press conference for today. So thank you very much. Thank you to those on the live stream. I'm sorry if I didn't get to it.
Oh,
Thank you. Is that yours?